Hi, thank you so much for watching the Louie file today. Have you ever heard someone say being a Christian isn't about being religious, but it's what it is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? If you're a believer, I would bet you probably have heard that, probably even said it. I've said it, I've heard it lots of times. But have you ever stopped to wonder what that means? What does it really mean? What does it look like? How do we spot it when someone has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? I mean, sometimes we need to stop and think about what we say and how we see things and what others say. I mean, what are they really saying? Jesus told us to ask and that we would receive. So today, and this may take a few videos, but I want to just spend some time looking at what that means. And the best way I've come to see what that means, a personal relationship, is what does it mean in James? Look in James 2, verse 23. Now this is in the middle of a point James is making, and I don't want to get off into that right now, but James 2:23 says, "And the scripture was fulfilled which says, and Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness." And then he says, "And he was called the friend of God." Now, I don't think that Abraham was called the friend of God in the story back in the Old Testament. James is saying this here. So maybe the scripture itself doesn't come right out and call Abraham the friend of God. Now, obviously, James is the scripture. Don't get messed up here with what I'm saying. That part is not a quote from the Old Testament. What he's quoting is, "And Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness." All right, so this, and then in James 4, verse 4, look what it says here. It says, "You adulteresses, you do not know that friendship with the world is hostility toward God. Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." So it's very cut and dry. We are friends with God or we're friends with the world. We can't be both. We can't hold hands with both. We can't be intimate with both. We can't have a personal relationship, if you will, with God and a personal relationship with the world. Not in the same way, not in this intimate friendship way that the Bible is talking about. All right, so the first part of our investigation is based on this. Okay, so Abraham was a friend of God, which means he wasn't a friend of the world, and that's what we're called to do, called to be. So let's start at the beginning. What is the word friend in the Bible? What is the word friend? How is it interpreted? Now, I didn't go to Google this time. I just went to my faithful hardback copy of Strong's Concordance, which coincides with the King James Bible. And here's a little bit of what I found. The word friend in the Hebrew, as in the New Covenant, basically is defined as associate, companion. Oh, wait a minute. The Greek is associate and neighbor, is what I basically got out of that. The Hebrew, the Old Testament, had a little deeper definition, and it said the Hebrew for friend is associate, companion, fellow, friend, husband, companion, neighbor, and lover. So the root word led me to another word which means to tend a flock or pasture, to graze, to rule, to associate with as a friend, to keep company with, or in reference point, to keep sheep. In other words, be a shepherd. So I thought that tied in nicely to the metaphors and the illustrations Jesus uses as himself when he talks about being the shepherd. He says he's the good shepherd, and his sheep hear his voice, and they won't follow a stranger. They won't be a friend with the world if they're a friend with me. If I'm their shepherd, if I'm their companion, their lover, they don't go out and commit adultery by getting intimate with the world. Now, let me say this. When I say the world, I'm not saying that we hate people or we don't associate with people. In John 3:16, the Bible clearly tells us God so loved the world, right, So this is two distinct things here. In James it says, don't be a friend with the world. And I think what he's saying there is in worldliness, the temporal, fleshy, material world. Don't get caught up in the spirit of this world. Don't get caught up in a deception of trying to make yourself something in this world. That type of intimacy with the world will inevitably lead you away from intimacy and friendship with God, because you'll be chasing after popularity, a big reputation, more power, more money, those types of things. That's the thing he's telling us. We can't indulge with that and then expect to be a friend with God. So I think that we need to make that clear. So I hope that makes sense to you. A couple of things that I want to point out. I'm not going to flip to all these verses, but I will tell them to you and you can look them up. Matthew 11:19, they said Jesus was a friend of publicans and sinners. Wow. See, they didn't like that about Jesus. The religious people, the people that didn't know anything about a personal relationship or friendship with Jesus or with God, those folks didn't like the fact that Jesus became associates and friendly and with the publicans and sinners. So that right away is telling us that we do need to be friends with in that way. We need to associate with the people of the world, but we're not supposed to be so connected to them that we stray from our intimacy with God. I mean, the Bible clearly tells us that light can't have fellowship with darkness. Baal or devilish things can't have connection and union with holy and righteous things. So we got to keep that in mind. Now, John chapter 3:29, John the Baptist actually called himself the friend. He called himself the friend of the bridegroom. So he was saying he was a friend of Jesus. Pretty amazing thing to think about, being a friend with God or of God. All right, so I think I'm going to leave this video here. We're going to pick up on this same theme in the next video. It is going to be Abraham, a friend of God. And what does that mean? We're going to look back in the book of Genesis and see what we can discover about Abraham and his friendship with God. I hope you watch the coming up video, the upcoming videos, and you'll get the fuller scope of what I'm getting at here. And I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you then.